Hey guys, John here. This is going to be the practical for the fundamental series that I just released. Basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and create real-world problems that are going to show practical exercises and uses for implementing what we learned with variables, if statements, switch statements, for loops, and arrays. We're going to go ahead and create 3 programs in this session, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a quiz calculator, which is going to basically take quiz grades, calculate the average, and then it's going to return a grade, whether you have an A, B, C, or an F. And then we're also going to create a level selector. Maybe a level selector. You guys can create your own level selector and make it as advanced as you want. But we're definitely going to create a temperature converter, and then we are also going to create a, what are we going to create? A tip calculator. So like when you go to a restaurant and you tip, so we'll be able to tip 10, 15, or 20%. And all these programs are going to be able to be used in the inspector, and it's going to use every type of concept that we've covered up until now. I will try and make this as interactive as possible, but really it's going to just give you the opportunity to watch me go through the thought process and think logically how to solve these problems. Now, when it comes to programming, only about 10% of it is a battle with the syntax. The other 90% is logic. The syntax of what the videos I just showed you are for the syntax. Without the syntax, the logic is useless. However, with that syntax, now you can focus entirely on the logic. So once you get the syntax, this will eventually become secondhand nature. You can focus entirely on the logic. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and create the quiz grade calculator first. So I'm going to go ahead and say quiz grade calculator. Alrighty, and I'm going to go ahead and I don't know if in my previous videos my IDE here is the font's too small, so I'm just going to zoom in a bit, okay? Zoom in, go in like 3. Alright, so I want to create a quiz calculator. So the program we have to create, so we're going to say here, create a program that takes 5 quiz grades, prints the average, and determines the grade. Alright, so the way it works here in the States, I don't know if you're watching this wherever you're from, but here we have A, B, or at least in Atlanta, where I am, we have A, B, C, and F. So an A is, anything above a 90 is an A, anything between 80 and 90 is a B, 70 to 80 is a C, anything below a 70 is an F. Alright, so we're going to go and create that. So right away I know I need some variables that are going to hold my quiz grades, right? I can use an array, or I can just create 5 quiz variables. For simplicity reasons, it might be better for me because I need to calculate the average. So instead of having to write quiz 0 plus quiz 1 plus quiz 2 in like an array format, I'm just going to create 5 variables for it. So I'm going to say here public float, and I'm going to say float because quizzes, you can have like an 89.5, whatever. We're going to have here public float quiz 1, quiz 2, quiz 3, quiz 4, and quiz 5. Alright, so these are our quiz grades. Now I need a variable that's going to hold the average, right? We need to calculate the average, so we need a variable for that. So we're going to say public float average. Alright, now we can get into our function here, void start. So right when we hit the, right when we run the game, start's going to get called. And what we want to do is we want to calculate the average. Alright, so we're going to take the variable, which currently is 0. The value for average is 0, but it can vary. Remember, variables vary. We're going to say here it equals 0 now, but right when you start the game, it's going to equal the average. So we're going to say in parentheses, quiz 1 plus quiz 2 plus quiz 3 plus quiz 4 plus quiz 5. And then we're going to divide by how many elements we have, or how many quiz grades. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you just divide by 5. Now, instead of me having to actually assign these in the inspector or anything like that, or assign them here, I want them to be random values between 0 and 100. So I'm going to go ahead and just say here, quiz 1 equals random.range. That's going to allow us to randomize the value. Random.range is a unity function which takes a min and max. So the min you can have on a quiz is 0, and the max that you can have is 100. Now, in Unity, when using random.range, the max is never called. So I want it to be a float value between 0 and 100. So I say 0f And then you'll notice here I have two options. I can do integers or floats. I'm going to go ahead and say 100.1f. That way, because 100 will never actually be called. Your max is never called, which means now it's between 0 and 100. 100 and 0.1 will never get called. Alright, so that's for quiz 1. And basically I'm just going to go ahead and do that for each quiz grade. And that's going to give them random values at the start. Quiz 3 equals, so 0f, 100f, oh, and then take that, quiz 4, and quiz 5. Alright, so now that they have random values, we can go ahead and calculate the average. Alright, now the average is calculated. So if we just go ahead and run this, we're going to have an average. But let's actually do something with it. So on the main camera here, we can put our quiz grade calculator. And you'll see here that they're not even populated. But once I run the game, void start gets called. Now they have random values. And the average is 23.89564. Now the problem with that is you'll never see that on a quiz grade. So let's round it down to, say, 2 decimal numbers. Now what if you don't know how to do that? Well, you have Google. So let's go ahead and open up Google. Alright, and let's go ahead and just search for it. Let's search for, here you go, how do, here, let's say convert to 2 decimal places, and then Unity C#. Anytime you need to search for something, always just add Unity C# at the end. So check this out, how to round a float to 2 decimal places. Alright, and this is Unity answers, I didn't want that. I actually want something else. Hold on. Convert to 2 decimal places Unity. Let's remove the C# part. Alright, here we go. So, round float. Okay. Not what I was hoping for. I was hoping for a better article that I know exists. This should, okay. Okay, now it took me to this. I guess the Unity answer is loaded weirdly. Okay, so check this out. How to round a float to 2 decimal places. All right, here's the question, here's the answer. So you can do your float, which is the average, equals mathf.round. So there's a function to round whatever you want. And then this 100 here, where you're multiplying by 100 and dividing by 100, that's how many decimal places. So you have tenths, hundredths, thousandths, and so forth. Okay, so how many decimal places do you want? If you want 1,000, if you want 3 decimal places, you have tenths, hundredths, thousandths, so you'd have 3. All right, you have 10,000s and 100,000s if you want more than that. So let's go ahead and use that example here. So we say average equals, and then we say here mathf.round, and the syntax here, it's looking for a float. So I'm going to go ahead and say float that I want to round is the average multiplied by 100, so I have 2 decimal points, then divide it by 100 at the end. And that's going to give us 2 decimal places. So if we go ahead and test it out now, and there you go, 47.25 is the average. Alright, good, so that's a failing grade. Okay, so, and now we got a 6.9, so it looks like we're failing quite a bit. So what we can do here is, let's go ahead and figure out if we passed or not. So basically, now is where we use our if statement syntax. So for instance, I need to know if the range is between, if it's greater than 90. If it's greater than 90, the average, then I want to print out to the user, you have an A. So it's really simple. In pseudocode, that looks like this. If average is greater than 90, then what? Then print you have an A. All right, so in actual code, that would look like if, and then here you have average greater than equal to 90, okay, because it could be 90 and above. So if average is greater than equal to 90, we're going to go ahead and say debug.log, you have an A. Alrighty. The next one would be an else if statement. And now we're checking for 2 now. So we're checking to see if it's greater or equal to 80, but less than 90. So this is where we have another logical operator that I didn't quite cover in the last one. It's the AND operator. So the AND operator looks like this. You first check your condition. So we're checking to see if it's greater than or equal to 80. So if average is greater than or equal to 80, and then you say and average is less than 90. So those 2 conditions have to be true in order for this function here, in order for this then statement to get called. We're going to say debug.log, you have a B. And then really simple here, same thing for the next one. So you have your else if, and you're checking the average again. If average is greater than or equal to 70, and average is less than 80, you have a C. All right, and then if it's none of those, what does that mean? You have an else clause. That means you have an F. And there you go. Now, there's also another important logical operator, and it's called the OR operator. So what if I was checking for the average is greater than or equal to 80 or less than 90? I could replace the and use two of those, vertical lines, and that's saying OR. All right, so you have your and logic, which is the ampersands, and then you have the OR, which is the vertical lines, two of them. All right, very important to know with creating logic problems. All right, so if we go ahead and test this out, let's go and run it a few times, and our program should be completed here. All right, so, and it printed out you have an F. The average was a 42.85. Let's go and run it again. 44.69. Now, here's an exercise for you. Go ahead and make it to where when I hit the space key, it will recalculate the average, and it will give these guys new random values. All right, if you're watching this and you're new, if you want to know how to hit the space key, also you need to use void update. Void start is called once. Void update is called about 60 times per second. So when you're checking for user input, you want to make sure you're in void update. So you have void update. If you want to check for the space key or any key, you do if, and then because you're checking to see if you hit a key, right? If you hit this key, you say input dot get key down. Get key means you're holding. Get key down is when you press it down. Get key up is when you lift your finger up. So I want to get key down, and then parentheses, and you'll see here it says in the tooltip, get key down, and then a key code. So it's looking for a key code. So you type key code, dot, and then any key you want. Every key that's on your keyboard is listed here. So pick whichever one you want. If you want the space, use the space key. And then here, recalculate average with new quiz grades. And then you'll have to recall the start function so that, oh, you could even do that probably. Go ahead and just recall start right here. You could technically just do this, and that would work. All right, so that wraps up our first program. All right, that's our quiz calculator. Now let's go ahead and create, actually it says we have time, let's go and create a level selector. And let's go ahead and we're going to do it the same way we did here, and then we're going to convert it to a switch statement. So let's go ahead here. I'm going to save this one out. Save that one out. Alrighty, let's go and create our next one, which is going to be a level selector. Let's go and remove that. So we're going to create a C# script here. Level selector. Or, I'm sorry, it's not level selector. It's a difficulty level. Okay, so we have a difficulty level selector script. All right, so first thing we need to do is what is a difficulty selector? It's something that allows you to pick easy, medium, or hard in a game, right? So right there, you need three variables. You need a variable that holds your currently selected difficulty, and then you also need a variable for your three difficulties. You can do this through strings. You can also do this through ints. In my opinion, doing it through ints is a lot easier. So I'm going to have three variables. I have public int current difficulty, and then here I have public int easy equals 0, medium equals 1, and hard equals 2. And I'm going to actually change this to normal. So int normal equals 1, int hard is 2. So we have three difficulty levels. Alright, so we have our three variables here. Int easy, not sure what happened with east there. Okay, so we have public int easy equals 0. We have normal equals 1, and hard equals 2. Remember, if I separate them by a comma, it just takes the same data type. The last one has to end with a semicolon, if you're going to create your variables like this. Alright, so we have a variable for our current selected difficulty, and then we have three difficulties. What I want to know is which one I selected. So when the game starts, I need to check which one it is. So I'm going to say if current difficulty equals easy, then I want to debug.log, you selected easy. And I want to do the same thing for if it's normal or hard. I just want to print out you selected that one. So I'm going to say else if the current difficulty equals normal, debug.log, you selected normal. And then if you obviously selected neither of those, then that means you selected hard. Alright, now this is an if-else statement. A more efficient way to do this would be using a switch statement. So you selected hard. Okay, so let's go ahead and convert this to a switch statement. So remember, a switch statement, it means in order to use a switch statement, use a switch keyword, and we need to switch through a variable. So what are we switching through? We're switching through the current difficulty, right? So we say switch current difficulty. Now we need case values. What are the values we're looking for current difficulty? We're looking for case what? Case 0, right? So difficulty being case 0 for easy, case 1 for normal, and case 2 for hard. Alright, and let's go ahead and say here, what happens if the value of current difficulty is 0? Debug.log, you selected easy. Alright, and then don't forget you have to break. And then here, you selected normal for case 1. Don't forget to break your case so it knows when you're done. And then case 2, you selected hard. Alright, and don't forget to break again. Now what if the values aren't here? What if you didn't pick 0, 1, or 2? Well, then you have an invalid one, so we need to use our default case, which is just default. And we go ahead and say here, debug.log, invalid selection. And don't forget to break. So there's our switch statement. So this does the exact same thing as this. So we can delete the if-elses, and now we're stuck with the switch statement, which looks a lot nicer. So let's go ahead and test that out. On our main camera here, we can add our difficulty. Can't add it because it's not the same name. Alrighty, let's go and add that. Alright, here we go. So current difficulty is 0, and then we have easy, normal, and hard. So if I run it, it should print out you on easy, which it does. Alright, so let's go ahead and change it now. So let's go and make it like 2. And you'll see here you selected hard. And if it's a value that doesn't exist, like 100, it's going to say it's going to default on the default case. Invalid selection. Alright, good stuff. So, pretty simple to use that with the switch statement, if-elses, and variables. Let's go ahead and do something, let's go ahead and create real quickly. Let's go ahead and create, and I'm actually not going to do the temperature converter. You guys can do that one on your own. I might not do the, I don't think I'm going to do the tooltip either. The tooltip, I mean the tip calculator one is the same thing. You guys can do the tip calculator on your own. It's basically just using if-else statements and switch statements. Basically, you have a bill, so you need a variable that holds the bill, and then you'll calculate the tip. So you'll calculate a tip by multiplying your percentage of tip based on the bill amount. That's your total. That gives you the tip, and you just add it. So you guys can create that. You can use your if-else statements to check for what the value is if your tip is like 10% or 20%, stuff like that. So I'm actually not going to include that in this video. What I am going to do is I want to move on to arrays and how to really use them with our loops. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and create, and I might still do the tip calculator if there's time, but I'd rather do the arrays because they're a little bit more important. So let's go ahead and create a new C# script here, and this is going to be array example 2. Alright, let's say I have a list of names, an array of names, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and create 5 names here. We're going to say public string, right, because it's names in the array brackets, and then names equals, let's go ahead and say John, oops, I need the brackets, don't forget those. We'll say John, Julie, Mark, we'll say Harrison, I don't know if that's 2 R's or not, and we'll say George. Okay, so we have John, Julie, Mark, Harrison, George, 5 names. Now what I want to do is I want to have 5 numbers, so 5 ages. So I'm going to say public int, and then we have here an array of ages, and we have 5 of them. So we're going to go ahead and say here 22, we'll say like 38, 40, and 18. Alrighty, so we have names and ages. Now, at start, if I want to print out each of these names, how can I do that? Well, I could simply create 5debug.logs, and I could say this, names, and then the first element, right? But that's 5debug.logs. Instead, I could use a for loop to iterate through this array and print out each element using I, because I gets incremented. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to create a for loop. I'm going to say for int I equals 0, and this I is a variable. It could be anything. It could be James. It could be whatever you want. The standard for C# is I. So for int I equals 0, semicolon, while I is less than some max value, I want the length of the array. So how do I do that? I type the name of the array, dot length, and that's going to return how many elements are in the array, which is 5. Alright, so I would say here names.length and then increment I. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say debug.log, and I'm going to say here names and then the index, which is going to be I. So what's going to happen here is it's going to go through the array. So I is 0, and it's going to loop through. Is 0 less than 5? Yes. So it's going to say names. It's going to say print out names element I. I equals 0, so it's going to print out 0. Then I gets incremented. Now I is 1. So is 1 less than 5? Yes. So it prints out names and then I, which is 1. So it's going to print out Julie. Then it's going to print out Mark, Harrison, George. So let's go ahead and test that out. We put this on the main camera here. Alright, you'll see we have 2 arrays. We have our names and ages. And let's go ahead and test it out. And there we go. So we have John, Julie, Mark, Harrison, and George. Pretty cool, right? So let's go ahead and add their ages now. I would say here, so what if I wanted to say, what if I wanted to print out a message, my name is John and I'm 22, and I want it to be my name is insert name, my name is insert, and I am insert age for each one, right? I would say here, debug.log, I'd have a string that says my name is, and then a space, and then I'd add onto the string the variable. So I would say my name is, and then I would say names, I, the current index that we're on, so my name is, and then plus, I would say space, my name is John, and I am, and I'm 22. So I need to print that out. So I need to say plus ages, and then I. Alright, so it's going to go through, it's going to loop through, so it's going to print out, it's going to say my name is John and I'm 22, my name is Julie, 22, Mark, 38, Harrison, 40, George, 18. Let's go and test it out. And there you go. My name is John and I'm 22, Julie 22, Mark 38, Harrison 40, George 18. Pretty cool stuff. Now, what if I wanted to add some more logic to this? For instance, what if I wanted to find a name? So right now I have John, Julie, Mark, Harrison. What if this was 100 names in here? Like what if the length of this array was 100 elements? 100 names here, and I need to know if that array contains the name John. Well, what I can do is I can use a for loop to iterate through it and check for that name. So right here, I'm saying for int I equals 0, I less than the names array length, and then I plus plus. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create logic. I'm checking to see if the current name, so I'm checking to see if names, the current index we're on, so John, and I'm checking to see if that current index equals what I'm looking for. What's the name I'm looking for? It could be John, right? So if it is, I'm going to say debug.log, found, and then let's see who it is, names I. So if I'm looking for John in the array, this is how you would do it. I would say if the current names equals the name I want, debug.log found, and it should print out John. Let's go ahead and run it. And there you go, found John. All right, you can do the same thing with a number. What if I was, let's change this to ages.length. And what if I was searching for 38 in that array? Well, I would say here, if ages, the current element we're in, the current age we're in, if that element equals, say, 38, debug.log found, and you would say here, ages, 38. Oops, sorry, age is I. And that should print out 38. So let's go and test that out. And there you go, found 38. So you can do some pretty cool stuff with this. Something also really neat is what if I want to print out, let's go and print out just 1 through 10. We don't even need arrays to do that. Let's go ahead and create a for loop here. And I'm going to go and say here for int I equals 0, I less than 10, and then I plus plus. It's going to print out 0 through 9 because numbers start at 0. I'm just going to say debug.log I. Now, it's going to print out 0 through 9. All right, you see that? 0 through 9. And to fix that, all we have to do is we just have to say, well, I equals 1, and it's less than equal to 10. All right, it's going to print out 1 through 10. And what I want this program to do now is it's printing out 1 through 10, but I want it to print out 1 through 10, but skip 6. So right now it prints out 6. How do I make it skip 6? Well, I need to check if 6 is even an option here. So what I can do here is add logic. If I equals 6, which it eventually will, right? Because 6 is still less than equal to 10, so it's going to continue looping. And then what do I want to do? I don't want to call this function here, which is going to print out the current value. I want to skip it. How do I tell it to skip? Well, we have what's called the continue keyword. So I can write continue. And the continue keyword is going to allow me to, basically what's going to happen is it's going to say I equals 6, continue, it's going to stop right here, and it's going to increment I, it is going to increment I, and it's going to start back up. So it's going to skip 6, continue to 7. So now I is 7. It's not ever going to get here. So if I run this, you'll see here it's going to print out 1 through 5, skip 6, 7, 8, 9. See that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, skip 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's no 6 to be found. Now what if I also not only wanted it to skip 6, but what if I wanted it to stop at 7? Well, I could do the same thing. Let's go and create another if. So I can create an else if here. So I can go ahead and say, or I could even do it through a switch statement, but for 2 you don't need to. So I'm going to say else if I equals 7, and what happens there? I need to stop, I want it to stop looping. I don't want it to print out, I don't want it to print out 8 or 9, but I do want it to print out 7. So I'm going to put that there. I'm going to keep this one here. Now, after it prints out 7, I want it to stop. I want to break out of the loop. So guess what? We have a break keyword. You're familiar with that with the switch statement. That's going to basically say, if I equals 7, print I, which is 7, and then break. So now, this line of code here will finally get called when you break out of the loop. Or if you wait till it's done looping at 10, it will still get called. But we're telling it to break, which means it's no longer going to loop, and now we're moving on with the rest of our code. So you broke the loop early. And let's go and test that. All right, there you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, skip 6. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, skip 6, 7, and then you broke the loop early. So this is some pretty cool things you can do. Now what I want to do is I want to get a little bit more game object related here. So what I'm going to do now is let's go ahead and create 3 cubes. So we're going to have a cube here, and we're going to just duplicate it. Oops. All right, so we got cube 1, 2, and 3, right? And they're all right here in our scene. And I'm going to go ahead and say here, let's set the position 0, 0, 0. All right, and then I'm going to actually space them out a bit so we can see them. So 0, let's go ahead and say 1.5, 0, and then here, negative 1.5. So we have 3 cubes, right? I'm going to create a tag for them, and I'm going to name it cube. So we're going to say cube. All right, and let's go ahead and give them all the tag of cube. Okay, so I have 3 cubes here. What I want to do is through script, with this array example2 script, when I hit the space key, I want to grab each of those cubes and I want to turn their color red. How do I do that? Well, I can basically use an array of game objects populated with those 3 cubes, and then using a for loop or a for each loop, I can grab each cube in the array, I can grab its material, and I can change the color. So check this out. If I wanted to do that, here's how it would work. Let's Let's delete this. Basically, what I would say here is I would have an array, right? An array of game objects. So I would basically have here, and I'm actually going to do this all in start. It's going to be a local array. So I'm going to basically say here, game object array, and then we're going to say cube array. Cube array. All right, and it's going to equal the elements. So how do I populate this array now? I can't go in the inspector because it's a local variable. So what I can do is I can say GameObject.find, and check this out. GameObject.find GameObjects. So plural with tag. Well, the tag I'm looking for is cube. So it's going to take all the cubes in our scene, any cube that has a tag of cube, and it's going to put it inside this array. And let me make sure that's a capital C. And it is cube. Okay, good. So now that our array is populated, what I can do is I can use a for loop to iterate through the array and change each cube's color. So I can say for int I equals 0, I less than the cube array dot length. How many times do we want it to loop? So we have 3 cubes, so we need it to go at least 3 times around. And then we're going to increment I, and I need to grab the current cube. So how do I do that? Cube array I. And then I want the what? I need the material off it, right? So I need the renderer component first. So I need to say get component, and I want the renderer. And if you're not familiar with get component, I have a video on get component you can go watch. We have get component renderer dot material dot color equals color dot red. And what that's going to do, it's going to loop through each cube and set the material to red. So if we go ahead and run it, there you go. They're red. Now, if I wanted to do that, like I said, when you hit space key, you just basically come in here, if input.getKeyDown, keycode.space, and then here we have this logic. So it's pretty cool. Alright, so that's doing it with a for loop. What if we wanted to use a for each loop? Well, so there you go, hit space. So if we want to do it with a for each loop, it's the exact same process, just with the different wording. So let's go and comment out this for loop here. Let's do it using the cube array. So I'm going to say for each. And what am I doing? I'm going to say for each cube, this can be named anything. It can be named James. Alright, so basically I'm going to say for each, and I use var, which is the data type, universal data type. So I say for each cube, in what array? We have cube array. I want to take the current cube. I want to get the renderer component. I want to get the material, the color, and then I want to assign it a new color. Alright, so for each cube, and when I hit space key, they're still all going to go red. And there you go. So for loop and for each loop are no different. They're the exact same things, just different wording and preference. Alright guys, we are hitting the 30-minute mark, so I'm going to start wrapping this up. I hope you guys got a little bit better understanding on how to use these and when to use these. You can think of some interesting scenarios, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start work on the intermediate series, which is going to cover lists. We're going to cover lists, properties, probably dictionaries. I'm not sure what else will be in that one just yet, but then when we get to advanced stuff, that's going to be fun because we're going to do events and delegates, event actions, which are amazing, and lambda expressions, which are very cool. So thanks for watching, guys, and make sure you are subscribing. Make sure you are on Digital Gaming Institute, the Facebook page. You'll get up-to-date info before anyone else does. Pretty cool stuff. And yeah, thanks, guys. Bye.